This is Heather O'Rourke. In the 1980s, she was one of Hollywood's brightest child stars, known for her unforgettable role in the horror flick Poltergeist. But in 1988, her life was tragically cut short. At just 12 years old, Heather died of cardiac arrest caused by intestinal complications. Her death made national headlines not only because of her age, but also because she was already the fourth Poltergeist cast member to die unexpectedly. Many started believing the franchise was cursed. However, Heather's death gained a much more sinister notoriety than the other ones. Years after her passing, rumors started circulating that an underground cult of Hollywood elites might have been responsible for her death. This video will attempt to answer the question, what truly happened to Heather O'Rourke? The summer of 1982 is known as the Summer of Spielberg. Just days apart from each other, Steven Spielberg released two blockbuster films, E.T. the Extraterrestrial and the movie Poltergeist. While E.T. was a bigger hit, Poltergeist quickly earned a reputation as a horror cult classic, redefining the haunted house genre. But the film wasn't just followed by praise and accolades, it also had an eerie rumor surrounding it. The Poltergeist franchise was cursed. Just after the film's release, one of the stars of the movie, Dominique Dunn, was strangled by her ex-boyfriend, John Thomas Sweeney, falling into a coma and dying days later. A few years after, two more Poltergeist members died unexpectedly. But the curse really took hold in 1988 with the tragic death of 12-year-old Heather O'Rourke. At the time, Heather was one of Hollywood's brightest rising stars. Her performance as Carol Ann in Poltergeist was hailed as one of the best child performances in the history of Hollywood. Her role in the movie came about by pure chance when Spielberg spotted her eating lunch with her mother at MGM Commissary. She was only 5 years old at the time, and Spielberg immediately saw something in her, a moment that would change Heather O'Rourke's life forever.
Heather O'Rourke.
Heather O'Rourke.
Heather O'Rourke.
Heather was absolutely incredible.
After Poltergeist became a hit, Heather O'Rourke's career skyrocketed. TV roles came pouring in, and she continued playing Carol Ann in Poltergeist 2, with Poltergeist 3 already in the works. Her future in Hollywood seemed brighter than ever. But in 1988, everything changed. A year earlier, in 1987, Heather O'Rourke was diagnosed with having Crohn's disease and was undergoing cortisone treatments during the filming of Poltergeist 3. That's why she had those bloated cheeks at the time. Then on January 31st, 1988, she began showing flu-like symptoms. The next morning, she collapsed in her home and was rushed to the hospital. En route, she suffered cardiac arrest but was revived by paramedics. Once she arrived at Children's Hospital in San Diego, doctors discovered she had intestinal stenosis, a narrowing of the intestine that can block food, liquids, and gases, potentially leading to infection. She underwent emergency surgery and survived, but tragically suffered a second cardiac arrest in recovery. This time, doctors couldn't save her. Heather was pronounced dead on February 1st, 1988 at 2:43 p.m. Her cause of death was ruled as congenital intestinal stenosis, complicated by septic shock. After Heather O'Rourke's death, many jumped to blame the infamous Poltergeist curse for her demise, something I found completely ridiculous. I mean, every cast member from The Wizard of Oz died. Does that mean that movie is cursed? A lot of actors from Harry Potter died. Is that franchise cursed too? I mean, it's almost like every actor from every movie you ever watched is dying. It's almost as if we all are dying. Come on, people. But while the Poltergeist curse is a stretch, Heather O'Rourke's death did raise some questions. Dr. Daniel Hollander, head of gastroenterology at UC Irvine, called her death distinctly unusual. He said he would have expected digestive issues throughout her life, not for it to just suddenly appear. However, he did acknowledge that her sudden death wasn't impossible. But nevertheless, these strange circumstances fueled conspiracy theories in Hollywood's darkest corners. Nearly 30 years after Heather's death, on November 9, 2017, a mysterious post appeared on the gossip site Crazy Days and Nights. The post was published anonymously by the site's owner, known by his username, Anti-Lawyer. It described an event that happened one day on a TV show set filmed in the 1980s, where an anonymous young actress was assaulted and died due to the sustained injuries. She was supposedly guest starring on this unnamed TV show, and after her morning shoot that day, they brought her onto a stage typically used for a game show, one still taping today. The front rows were filled with men who were, themselves, while the girl stood on the stage in a bikini, the lights too bright for her to see the audience. Then, after some time, 3 men took her to a different part of the studio. 45 minutes later, one of them ran out calling for a medic. Allegedly, she was unconscious because something was inserted into her, causing harm. A medic arrived, then an ambulance, and her parents were told some baloney vague explanation what happened, and the girl later died due to her injuries. Internet sleuths quickly started connecting the dots, speculating that this unnamed anonymous actress in the post was none other than Heather O'Rourke. The writer of the post, Anti-Lawyer, later revealed that they were correct. It was also revealed that the TV show this all allegedly happened on was the sitcom Rocky Roads. The post ignited a firestorm online. With the rise of the Me Too movement and growing allegations of misconducts in Hollywood, the Heather O'Rourke story gained even more traction. The conspiracy theory was that the official cause of her death, the intestinal obstruction, wasn't exactly what it seems. People started claiming that the intestinal obstruction wasn't from some birth defect, but from that very thing they inserted into her on the set of Rocky Roads. The fact that no autopsy was performed only fueled the conspiracy theory further. Now here's where the things get really creepy. In 2020, Anti-Lawyer shared a chilling update on Heather O'Rourke. He alleged that after her burial, strange events started happening around her grave. The day after she was laid to rest, a man was spotted at her grave stealing a bouquet of flowers. He fled before anyone could identify him. Then, in the summer of 1988, someone vandalized her vault with red spray paint, spraying "all worn out RR." The family was notified, the damage was photographed, and in just 5 hours the vault was cleaned. Police were called, but apparently dismissed it as unimportant. Oddly enough, the photographs didn't develop correctly. Internet detectives quickly speculated that RR stood for Rocky Roads. In the fall of 1988, another man was spotted kneeling in front of Heather's tomb after dark. As usual, he fled when seen. Then, on the anniversary of her death in 1989, her family gathered at her grave. Her mom, dad, stepdad, sister, and her grandparents. It was a quiet, somber moment, but as they were prepared to leave, an unidentified man approached them and said something that frightened Heather's mother. They left in a hurry. The man, however, stayed behind and picked up the little Dumbo toy they left on her grave, stuffing it in his pocket before he fled. For a few years, the grave remained undisturbed. Then in 1991, Heather's body was exhumed under the cover of night to avoid notice. 3 days later, her body was quietly returned to the tomb. In 1992, Heather's body was exhumed for a second time. When a police officer asked, why were they exhuming her again, his colleague replied, "What do you mean again?" It turned out that the first exhumation had been illegal, despite the convincing paperwork and what appeared to be real police. In 1994, someone vandalized her tomb again, this time smashing the face of her tomb, removing her body, cutting some hair from her head, and returning her to the crypt. A worker who saw the corpse claims she looked unusually well preserved. He even suggested that her body might have been swapped for an exact replica. So, what the hell happened to Heather O'Rourke? In order to answer this question, we have to look at the root of the conspiracy, the place where it all began. Who is this seemingly all-knowing Hollywood insider, Anti-Lawyer? Crazy Days and Nights is a gossip blog that launched in 2006. run by a mysterious figure under the username Anti-Lawyer. In one of his first posts, he claimed that he was in a unique position to tell us what was really going on in Hollywood. According to the short bio on the site, Anti-Lawyer represented major stars through arrests, divorces, breakups, and hookups. He painted himself as almost the most plugged-in guy in Hollywood. He was friends with Katherine Heigl, Leonardo DiCaprio, and even the late Frank Sinatra. Now, Anti-Lawyer wasn't writing some big, well-sourced exposés. He was dropping so-called blind items, which are short, cryptic pieces of gossip that only hinted at who they were about. This style earned him the reputation as the king of the blind item. But over time, his posts shifted. They got darker, diving into the sinister underbelly of Hollywood. Long before mainstream media reported on Harvey Weinstein or Kevin Spacey, Anti was already posting about them. In one 2016 blind item, he described a producer/mogul who threatened to ruin an actress's career after she rejected his advances. When the Weinstein scandal exploded, Anti exposed the item, naming the mogul as Harvey Weinstein and the actress as Saoirse Ronan, though it's worth noting, Ronan has never been linked to Weinstein in any other reporting. As Anti's posts gained traction, Hollywood magazines and websites started taking notice, some even calling him a whistleblower. But the big question remained: who was behind the Anti-Lawyer persona, and where was he getting his information? In 2018, Anti-Lawyer launched the Crazy Days and Nights podcast, expanding on the same Hollywood gossip themes as his blog. Through the show, he connected with a fan named Cassandra Crossy. She soon became his collaborator and eventually his lover. Anti told her he was single, said he wanted to marry her, but he already had a spouse. When Cassandra found out and he stopped returning her calls, she threatened to expose his identity to the world. In response, Anti-Lawyer filed a restraining order, which would ultimately lead to the very exposing he tried to prevent. Cassandra struck back, creating her own podcast and sharing her story of a toxic, manipulative relationship she had with a man named John Robert Nelson, a middle-aged, mostly low-level lawyer who had crafted the glamorous alter ego of Anti-Lawyer. Now, on the Crazy Days and Nights website, he described himself as an insider, a Hollywood-connected attorney with first-hand access to A-list scandals. In reality, he was a probate lawyer who once ran for Congress and failed spectacularly. However, now that his real name was revealed, people started tracing the origins of the Heather O'Rourke story. Brian Pockras is an attorney and the producer behind the documentary Heather O'Rourke, She Was Here. Before filming the movie, he did his own digging. In the original Crazy Days and Nights Heather O'Rourke post, Anti-Lawyer, aka John Robert Nelson, claimed that an actress who co-starred with O'Rourke in the sitcom Rocky Road had witnessed the horrific things that happened to her on the set, and even sent him a short description of what happened. Pockras tracked her down and she said that it never happened. Furthermore, a teacher that was on the set that day backed her up, and so did the actress's mother, who was present on the set the whole day. Pockras came to a clear conclusion. Either Nelson, or whoever submitted that tip to Nelson, completely fabricated the story. They found the most obscure credit of Heather O'Rourke on IMDb, which is Rocky Road's, and fabricated a truly disgusting story around it. Eventually, in 2019, even Nelson, Anti-Lawyer, took the post down because it upset Heather O'Rourke's family. Now, why would you take the post down if it was true? On April 24th, 2024, Vulture published a story and an interview with John Robert Nelson, and I would urge you to read it if you're really interested in the story. Now, in the interview, Nelson insisted that he never outright fabricated any story, but he did admit, however, that many of the tips he posted came from anonymous readers, and that he could rarely, if ever, verify them. The less he believed the tip, the more vague and generalized he'd make the post. Still, he maintained he wasn't outright making stuff up. He also claimed that one of the best leads came from paparazzi and entertainment reporters, people on the fringes of Hollywood who see things and hear whispers. So, make of that what you will. There is no solid evidence that Heather O'Rourke was ever harmed by anyone. At the time of her death, she was at her home in California, not on the TV set of Rocky Roads. She was also conscious when the paramedics came, contrary to the claims made in the original anti-lawyer post. There's not a shred of substantial evidence to support any of this. And considering that Crazy Days and Nights, especially after revealing anti-lawyer's identity, is basically a dumping ground for internet rumors, it's fair to say that this most likely fabricated story went viral accidentally. And this doesn't mean horrible things aren't happening to children in Hollywood. They are. But if we're serious about uncovering the truth, we need to weed out the hoaxes, the lies, and the distractions that are clouding the real story of real victims. As it stands, in my opinion, the Heather O'Rourke rumor is pure baloney. If someone ever comes forward with actual evidence I can delve into, then we can talk differently. But until then, I think we should leave this child and her grieving family to rest in peace.